Happy Friday. We tried to make this outdoors. It was not technologically possible yet. One day, maybe. There have been some tornadoes in the south. We are monitoring those closely. The severe weather outbreak that's impacting, of course, the southeastern part of the United States. We extend our
prayers to those in Newnan, Georgia that got hit hard.
Mississippi, who lost
I'm in Georgia,
as a result
northern
of the
Georgia,
severe
and we
weather
didn't
outbreak.
really get anything.
We will travel to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where he will deliver a speech laying out more details of his plan to build the economy back better.
Because he ripped up the Keystone pipeline.
Georgia signed into law new restrictions on voting. President Biden has expressed his moral outrage over that.
Hey, there's Peter.
There's legislation in Congress, but does the administration plan to take any executive actions or file any lawsuits opposing these new laws?
Well, the administration has taken executive actions on voting rights, and of course we will continue to review options in that regard.
Isn't that supposed to be constitutional? It's not presidential.
This voting law, I should say, that passed in Georgia.
So he's going to make voting laws tailored for his
how
needs.
this
That's
initiative sets in place,
tyranny. That is a
allowing states,
dictatorship. That is the epitome of a
preventing states, I should say,
dictatorship.
to bring water to people standing in line, waiting to vote, deciding what you're going to end vote, deciding to end voting at 5 o'clock.
That's not what it says. You're lying to the people. Again, God, we are 3 minutes into this press briefing and you already started lying.
The most rigid circumstances.
It's not most rigid. It's the exact
like
same
the
thing
late
California's
Congressman John
doing.
Lewis said,
Communist
there's nothing more
California.
precious than the right to vote and speak up. And the president certainly
Tell them what it really
believes
is.
that.
You lying
There are
piece of
pieces
garbage.
legislation, as you noted. But that
5
he
minutes
is
in, you're a lying
watching
piece of
closely,
garbage.
that
I'll
he
say
will
it to
be
your face.
engaging
I live in
members of
Georgia.
Congress
What
on,
we passed
including
is
before the
nothing
People
like what
Act
she's
and the
trying to
John
make it
Lewis
sound
Voting
like.
Rights Advancement Act to make it easier for all eligible Americans to vote, to have access to the ballot box, and to prevent attacks on the sacred right to vote. I'll also note that when he was in Georgia just 2 weeks ago, he met with Stacey Abrams while he was there, and he will also continue to encourage and engage with
Stacey Abrams
outside
is
leaders
nothing
and
in the
activists
state of
on
Georgia.
steps
She's
they
not
can
an
take.
official. She's a
Obviously,
private
there's
citizen,
a
so
range of
stop
groups and
meeting with her.
organizations that may take legal action. That
We know
will-
that she
will be
changed the
leading in
vote this past
activism.
year, the
Some of
process
that
for
is
voting
going to
this
be more
past year with an
appropriate from
illegal
outside
deal done with
And-
Raffensperger.
removing our troops from harm's way, ensuring that Afghanistan can never again become a haven for terrorists that would threaten the United States or any of our allies. But
Syria
right now, we're
is.
consulting with our allies and partners, and the president has not yet made a decision.
Talk about a
I
haven.
think he will decide, Jen. Is it imminent or?
Well, obviously, May 1st is coming soon, but I don't have any timeline on when his decision will be made.
And separately, on North Korea, when do you expect your review of that policy to be completed?
Well, we are in the final stages of our intensive multi-stakeholder North Korea policy review. And we're, of course, discussing our review with national security advisors of South Korea and Japan at our trilateral dialogue coming up next week. And those consultations are an important part of our review process. Go ahead.
Thanks.
She didn't answer either
First,
question.
I want to follow on the Suez. How concerned is that the virus originated from the lab in Wuhan? Does President Biden have any views on where the virus may have originated, or has the U.S. come to a conclusion on that yet?
Well, as you know, the WHO is examining this, and we'll be releasing a report soon. We'll review that report once it's
That's not what he
available.
asked you, Jen.
We continue to learn more about the early stages of the
not what he
COVID-19
asked.
pandemic, including its origins, so we can better prepare for future crises. I know Dr. Walensky addressed this, and I think Dr. Fauci did as well this morning, and we'll look closely at that information when it's available.
Are the president's views
She
being
just
informed
flat
by
out
WHO
did not
report
answer
or
that question.
Advisors and
By his
what was he-
health and medical.
And then last one on the forced labor in Xinjiang in China. Some companies have come under pressure from the Chinese government, and some retailers have actually dropped pledges not to use products made with forced labor from that region. So, what is the U.S. doing to stop or deter China from making those kind of threats
Nothing.
against companies that have resulted in this problem?
Big fat
We
zero.
certainly have been watching this issue.
You're not
closely,
doing
as you
anything.
well know, and we've
Watching.
taken our own,
Okay, you're right.
strong
I was wrong.
actions in order
You're
to prevent
watching.
China from profiting off of its horrific human rights abuses in Xinjiang.
They've been doing it for
and
the
to
past
stop
50
imports of
years,
products
Jen.
made with forced labor in China. American
That-
consumers
those
and
two
consumers
microphones?
everywhere deserve to know that their
Those,
goods
let's
are-
see,
that the
those
goods
two
they are
microphones
buying
down there that
are
you're
not
talking
made with
into,
forced labor,
made in
and
China with
companies are
forced
standing
labor.
up for consumers' rights. The international community, in our view,
Your
should
watch,
oppose
I just
China's
saw, she has an
weaponizing
Apple
private
Watch
companies'
made with
dependence
forced
on its
labor in
markets
China.
to stifle free expression and inhibit ethical business practices. So it is something we are watching closely. We, of course, taken
So you're
our own
watching.
action. I would expect
That means you're doing nothing.
State
Watching,
and Commerce will have more to say on
watching,
this later today.
Just one quick follow-up, though.
Is doing
it
nothing.
seems like you've been having this message out there for the first couple months of this administration, but China only seems more emboldened to threaten these companies. So what more can be done from the White House to try to deter them?
She won't
from
answer
making these
this.
threats?
Well, we can work with our international partners, obviously, as I conveyed, on how we're going to
What do you mean work
push
with
back
them?
on China's efforts to weaponize private companies. And we can convey publicly, as we are now, and of course engage with private sector entities about these efforts. But a lot of that action
Nothing.
would happen from Commerce and in some cases the State Department. And
We can do
again, I expect
nothing.
we'll have more specifics to say later
like
today
it.
on this. Go ahead, Caitlin.
Few questions.
Caitlin.
On the WHO investigation that's coming out, Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, said a few months ago that they had deep concerns about the way that investigation was being conducted. Did they still have those deep concerns?
In part because there was a lack of transparency and there was a lack we weren't ensured that we would have access to the data available. So there was a delay. They actually delayed the release of that report, which we were encouraged by. We'll have to take a look at it and make sure we have access to the underlying information.
So what happens if the report comes out and President Biden is not satisfied with it?
Nothing.
Not satisfied with the report. Well, we've also called for an international
Nothing will
investigation
happen.
And look into,
I'll answer that one for you, Jen.
What's happened? And
We
the
won't do
origin,
anything.
Not just the origin. I should
Anything that
say,
has to do with
the,
China,
lack of
we won't do anything. I mean,
transparency,
we're
from,
letting them
the
kill,
Chinese. We have reinstituted or
slaughter
re-engaged,
a
with,
whole
through
ethnic
staffing of our,
group of people.
of our team
And
on the ground
Sleepy
in
Joe just
Beijing.
says, oh, it's
So
just part of their culture.
We'll see what the report says.
Yeah,
Where we have
part of their
concerns,
culture.
we'll look at the underlying data if we have access to that, and then we'll have to make a determination through an interagency process on what's next.
And just to get some clarity on yesterday, should we still be expecting executive orders from the president on gun measures?
On everything.
Imminently, or what do you, like a month from now, what do you think the time frame on
I
this?
can't give you an exact time frame, in part because they have to go through a review process. which
What
is
a
something
dictator.
that, we
This
do
man's
from
doing
here.
everything by executive
I
order.
will
That
note
is dictatorship.
when
Somebody stop
when
him.
The president was the vice president in the Obama-Biden administration. He helped put in place 23 executive actions to combat gun violence. It's one of the levers that we can use, that any federal government, any president can use to help address the prevalence of gun violence and
This is just so
address community
sad.
safety around the country. At the same time,
This man has no check, and he's not doing it. Obviously, Joe Biden's not responsible. It's his
there are two
people
background
that are doing this.
background check bills that
We already have background
are-
checks.
have been proposed, have been introduced.
We
have
already
been
do that.
working their way through. There have also been
So if that's what you're gonna do,
legislation
fine, we're
introduced to
good.
ban an
Don't worry
assault
about it.
ban assault weapons.
What's an assault
But
weapon?
he also believes that there is an opportunity, and sometimes that the best path forward is working through states. And there has been progress made. We've seen over the last several years. 20 states now have extended background checks. 19 states have red flag laws. 7 states now have assault weapons bans. We know they work, and so we have to address this.
How do you know
epidemic,
they work?
Address the threat of gun
Just
violence,
saying it. They just,
across
these
many,
people up there are
avenues,
just
and
saying
he's committed
any
to doing that.
crap they want
And
to.
then
They just
also,
make
is
up
there a
shit.
reaction to the
Just
Georgia
make it
State
up because
representative
nobody
who was
calls them on
arrested
it. And when they
overnight,
get called on it,
knocking on the
they don't
Georgia
answer,
governor's
and they stop
door
calling
as
on
he
that
was
person
signing
Peter.
that
It should not be harder. It should be easier to vote. We should not put limitations in place. People should be able to vote from home. They should be able to use absentee
Nope.
ballots. There
No,
should be a
it's not up
range
to
of,
you. It's not up to you, Jen. It's up to the
restrictions
people of that
are
state.
undone,
So
not
shut
put
your
back in
pie
place.
hole
so,
and stop telling
that's a
states what
concern.
to
One he
do.
certainly
Because the
shares,
Constitution
with
says the states decide who votes and how they vote.
Does he plan to reach out to her?
I don't have any calls to preview for you. If he does, I will certainly provide an update.
This is turning into a huge
Thank you, Jen.
dictatorship.
A couple follow-ups on
The
yesterday.
federal government's going to
The
tell everybody how to vote and who to vote
filibuster is
for.
a legacy of the Jim Crow era.
Get him,
Did he
Peter.
think that it was a legacy of the Jim Crow era in 2005 when he defended the filibuster and said altering Senate rules to help one political fighter or another could become standard operating procedure, which in my view would be disastrous?
Well, Peter, one of the things he talked about yesterday was the fact that between 1917 and 1971, the filibuster was used about 58 times.
He didn't-
Last year,
he didn't ask that.
year alone, it was used 5 times that many. It is not
250
being used for the
times
intended
by
purpose.
Democrats.
It is being abused
By
and
Democrats.
Yes, there are scenarios as it
Break
relates
it down.
to voting
Somebody
rights
break
where
it down.
it is oppressing. It is allowing for systematic racism in the country.
Bullshit!
So that's the concern he was expressing.
You're lying.
To follow on that, there are some concerns on the right.
How
that
is it
if you get rid of the
systematic
filibuster,
racism? And it wasn't
effectively
systematic
means one
racism when
party
they were
rule.
doing it.
So is that
250
what the
times
president
last
was
year.
getting at when he was asked about 2024, and he said, I have no idea if there will be a Republican Party.
Filibuster has nothing to do with race. Nothing.
Given as part of his answer, he conveyed that his objective and his hope is to work with Republicans. He wants to get work done for the American people. He wants to put in place solutions, put people back to work, get the pandemic under control, make voting easier and more accessible. And it's really on Republicans in Congress to decide if they're going to be part of the solution or if they're going to be part of obstruction. So he's leaving it up to them to make the decision on what role they want to play in
And in 2 years, you will be part of the obstruction.
The vast majority, the overwhelming majority of people coming to the border and crossing are being sent back, but only 13% of the 13,000 families that tried to cross last week were sent back, according to Axios. So where do we get a majority out of 13%?
Yeah.
The vast majority of adults are being sent back.
Okay, so the family units, 87% of them are being taken into the United States to either be resettled or await their hearings. I'm just curious, 87% in the country of the family units is not a majority being sent back.
At all.
A majority of adults, which every adult is not a part of a family unit, as I'm sure you're fully tracking, and tens of thousands of people are coming to our border. We know that.
Cherry pick.
And so the majority of adults are being turned away. Our policy remains the same. We are implementing Section 42.
The majority of people aren't being turned away.
A little bit earlier this week, there are capacity issues.
Adults
in Mexico,
showing up
we
are the
in
minority.
discussions with them
It's
about
all
addressing,
families and unaccompanied minors. That's who's showing up right now.
And they are not in a position to accept and take the families
Lie to
that
the
they have
people,
in the
Jen.
past. So that's part of the diplomatic discussions
Liar.
that we're having.
Okay,
God,
just
it's
one
so
more
frustrating
about
just
yesterday.
watching someone lie through their teeth,
we
just lie their ass off
starting
with
at the
no
end of the campaign,
integrity whatsoever.
And then into the transition, and here at the White House, anytime that the president has an event where he is given a list of reporters to call on, Fox is the only member of the 5-network TV pool that has never been on the list in front of the president. And I'm just curious if that is an official administration policy.
We're here having a conversation, aren't we?
Yes.
You're not
And
the
do I take
president, are
questions from
you?
you every time you come to the
You're
briefing
not the
room?
president,
Yes,
are
Has
you?
the president taken questions from you since
You're
you
not the
came
president.
since he came into office?
Unfortunately,
Yes or no?
only when I have shouted after he goes through his whole list. And the president has been very generous with his time with Fox. I'm just curious about this list that he has given.
So
the only member of the 5-network pool never on it, dating back to when he resumed in-person events in Wilmington during the end of the campaign.
Well, I would say that I'm always happy to have this conversation
You're not
with
the
you,
president.
even about your awesome socks you're having on today, you wearing today, and
You're not
have
the
a conversation
president.
with you, even when we
You're not the
disagree.
president.
The president's taking your questions.
No.
And I'm looking forward to doing Fox News Sunday.
Straight up
this
lies.
Sunday for
Just
the third
straight
time
up
in the last few months.
lies.
I think we got to.
I think I got to move on
because
because we don't have much time because you're really,
The president
you know,
talked about
anyway.
the importance of kids going back to the classrooms.
God, what a
In
piece of
many
shit.
schools
by
5
day
days a
100,
week,
and
yes.
we're on track to meet that objective.
Bet you
I
don't.
will say that take
This
and implement,
woman
even without
constantly
and we feel
lies
it's
through
very
her
much in line
teeth.
with the CDC guidelines because
And
it is
it's not
one of
just
the
her sticking
mitigation
up
steps, and
for
it's a step we
her
have the power
president.
to take and
She
put into
is
place.
deciding to
We
lie
actually
through
don't
her
see an
teeth
issue,
because that's the kind of person
coming
she
up
is.
with
And
schools not
no one's
reopening.
holding her
They are
accountable.
reopening, more
And when she
reopening
is
every
held
single
accountable
weekend.
by Peter,
We certainly feel we're
she
on track to
pushes
meet
him
that goal.
out of the way and tells him to shut up and talks over him and doesn't answer the question.
30% of adults say they don't
Guys,
want
we can't let this happen.
How do you
We
get
cannot
things
let
back to normal
people
with those types of figures?
in this
And when specifically
this
do you plan to
administration
move forward with
become
a vaccine
dictators.
campaign to try to
And that's what's happening.
It's launching, Kristen. It's happening.
flat out
We are
dictators.
launching a public campaign there and making sure it's done in a way that keeps them safe and keeps everyone safe.
I think
That
we
does
all
not
know
imply
there's
that
a
we are not going
disaster
to
going
allow
on at the
access
border
until
and that this
that is done. It
administration is doing
implies
everything
that
in
is
their
his
power
first
to hide
focus.
it. I think we all know that.
Thanks for asking the question. That was his intention.
You lying.
time frame for when, and noted that NBC did go in as pool. Do you have a time frame for when the next round of cameras might be allowed in?
Oh, we're working on it. Hopefully soon. And it's something we're certainly committed to. And
Shoot, we're working on that. I'm glad you asked that
go ahead and back.
because as you know,
So
obviously
obviously
as you know,
there's lots of pieces
people are down in the border, and I'm just so glad you had, because, you know,
felt like he was saying
next.
gun control is not a priority compared to infrastructure, compared to Build Back Better. What's
Build
your
Back
response to
Better.
the groups who took that message away from the
Communism
president's
isn't,
comments
well, they're going to have to take our
First, the
guns
president
before they can go
understands
full
their
communism.
frustration, and he understands it as one of the few
Keep that in
people
mind.
in government who ever beat the NRA twice by leading the fight to pass the Brady Bill and the assault weapons ban. He understands this as a person who led the effort. at
Assault
President
weapons
Obama's
ban did
request
nothing to
strengthen gun
curb
measures
mass
after
shootings.
Sandy Hook,
Nothing.
and when that was
Zero.
voted down, helped put in place 23 executive actions to combat gun violence. You'll see more executive action, as
23
Josh and
more.
others were asking
Just
about.
now.
And
She
that
just
review's
said
underway.
23
and
more
efforts by
executive. That
him,
is straight up
and the
dictatorship.
administration to move forward in the weeks ahead, whether that is on legislation.
I'm gonna
supporting efforts that are
name this
happening in
video.
states which
Jen
we've seen as very
Psaki
effective and
confirms
impactful, and
Joe Biden is a
largely due to
dictator.
the advocacy
Let me
and
write that down.
activism of a lot of these groups. But you know, we would say that the frustration should be vented at the members of the House and Senate who voted against the measures the president supported.
In terms of the number of people trying to cross the border, it's about average.
It's not.
Those don't seem to square. How does the administration view this?
100,000 in the past 3 months. The average is around 30.
Well, the president was making the point that we have seen increases at the border in 2014 when he was the vice president, 2018 and 2019, and he conveyed that over the last 6 months of the
Now, I put the numbers up on my last video about the president. I put the numbers up.
Of about 29% over the last several months since he took office.
That's a lie.
So the point is, we've dealt with
Straight
this
out lie.
before.
It's
is often
100,000
seasonal.
for the past 3 months.
It is often cyclical.
It usually
and he
is
just
around
wanted to
30,000.
convey that in his
There was
effort
one
to-
year where
to
it was
communicate
67,000,
and be,
2019.
Provide educational information to the public.
But what
that
she's
doesn't
spitting out right
change the
now is
fact that he
propaganda and
is,
lies. She's lying to the
addressing
American
this
people as
by,
usual.
Putting forward every resource at our disposal
That's
in
what
the
dictators
administration.
do.
Just in this past week, we've taken steps to bring a number of new facilities online, moving these kids out of the Border Patrol facilities into the shelters, and we need to have places that are safe, that have educational resources, health
Why do you need to
resources,
open
mental
up
health
all
resources,
these
legal
places
resources. This is a step
if
toward doing
this
that.
is
The
a
other
normal
piece where
number?
he
If
has
this
been
is the
very
way it
focused, as
usually
we all have been,
happens,
is
then
on
why are you having
expediting
to open
processing
up
at the
all
border.
these
And
Fort
earlier this
Hood?
week,
Why
the
do you
Office
have
of
to do that?
Refugee
Convention
Resettlement
centers.
also
Why do I mean, this is
instituted a
normal.
revised policy
This is
for
absolutely
certain
normal
children who
according
have
to
a
you
parent
lying
or
piece
guardian
of
in the
crap.
United States. This
Why
will add more
are you opening
capacity,
these
more
places
swiftly
up?
Unite kids with relatives and
Never done it
sponsors.
in the
Of course, there
past.
should be a difference if it's a
So it's obviously
direct
not normal.
family
You're
member,
once
mother,
again lying to the
father,
American people.
and-
Thank
and
you.
a different kind of adult, right? So there are steps we're taking to try to expedite even the processing. So our focus is on actions and solutions. We certainly know this is a challenge. It's something he is briefed on regularly, and is pushing his team to take more rapid action. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you, Jeff. The president has said he wants bipartisan support, I think, for infrastructure package as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is that possible when Republicans are pretty adamant they don't want tax increases? In other words, how can you achieve bipartisan support for infrastructure if Republicans are drawing a hard line on taxes?
Well, first I would say, Peter, that I don't think most Republicans think that the United States, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, should be 13th in the world as it relates to infrastructure. You know, roads
Red
that are
herring.
broken down,
Boop, boop, boop,
infrastructure
shiny
that
ball,
isn't working,
squirrel.
a lack of
Squirrel.
access to broadband, that's not a Democratic issue. And the president is going to continue to make that case. Now, we don't know what the votes will be. We haven't proposed a package yet. And certainly what it will be tied to and the pay-fors will be a part of that discussion. But he certainly believes there's been a history of support for investing in infrastructure.
Jen,
He has
do you
had
remember what he
bipartisan
just
meetings
asked
in
you?
the White House. He's worked
Because
with
what you're
Democrats
saying
and Republicans
doesn't
on
have
getting
anything to do with what he
legislation,
just asked you.
You know,
Just-
getting steps taken in the past, and he's hopeful that that there's an agreement on that moving forward. Go ahead, Anita.
Thanks. 6 former commissioners, FDA commissioners, have called on the president to go ahead and nominate an FDA commissioner. You probably saw this week that the second in command there has announced that she's leaving. I'm wondering when the president plans to appoint someone or nominate someone for the FDA. But more broadly, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about why the president is behind Presidents Obama and Trump on appointing both at the FDA and a variety of other vacancies, including the Deputy Secretary at DHS and the Solicitor General.
Well, I'll also point out that the president is also the first president to have all 15 cabinet nominees confirmed on this timeline and without a single one dropping out, if we're just making comparisons between administrations. he certainly wants to have an FDA commissioner in place. He wants it to be the right person. And, there sometimes is a journey on personnel and determining who the right person is for the job, who's willing to do the job, who's available to do the job. And it's a priority, but I don't have an update for you on when he will nominate someone.
In general, just on some of these other positions, I take your point about the cabinet. I'm asking about some others, so.
What was your question again?
Well, just more broadly, why he's behind on some of these other positions that are not the actual cabinet that you've referred to.
Well, I think it's a little bit of apples and oranges. We obviously have made a great deal of progress on, again, the people who are running and leading these agencies more than any administration since the Reagan administration. We feel very good about that. We've also walked into a presidency where he is dealing with a pandemic that is still killing 1,000 people a day, 10 million people out of work, racial injustice across the country, a climate crisis. So he's got a few things on his plate, but he is committed to personnel, moving things forward, and certainly wants to have a full team across agencies.
And then if I could just follow up on something, you mentioned Title 42, which closes the border to non-essential travel. Before President Biden was president, several lawmakers, including then Senator Harris, now Vice President, obviously, called it an unconstitutional executive power grab that had no known precedent or clear legal rationale. Why is that still something that he has not rescinded? What is he reviewing that? What is the situation there? He clearly doesn't agree with the Vice President on that.
It's in place for public health reasons, given we're in the midst of a pandemic. That's why it's in place. I think we're gonna have to move on. Go ahead.
Anytime it gets spicy, she has to move on. Every single time.
The number of Americans who have been tested for COVID has dropped off dramatically as more people are getting. And one more, the NFL has announced that it is not going to require players, coaches, staff members to get the COVID vaccine if they want to play, practice, etc. Is that a mistake? Then should this vaccine be required for athletes?
No.
Well,
I mean, if we're a dictatorship,
I don't know that we're making NFL policy from here, but it is certainly recommended by
I mean, you're going to want to control the private citizens with it
because it's how we can keep people safe.
What are we turning into?
Whether it's our family members or our friends,
who is this guy?
Or people in the stands who are attending these games. So certainly,
the government cannot force anybody to take a vaccine.
Follow public health guidelines to recommend that their players, the members of the NFL, follow those public health guidelines, whether it's mask wearing, social distancing.
I bet you.
Washing hands.
I bet you the players' union got involved and said, "No, we're not going to stand behind forced vaccinations." And of course, they caved because of the unions.
First, as the president conveyed yesterday, he feels that voting rights are pushing back on voting rights, making it harder to vote is un-American.
It's not making it harder to vote. It's the same thing California and Virginia do. There's nothing about what we just passed that makes it harder than any other states.
To make it more difficult.
So you're just talking straight out of your behind.
As he did quite passionately yesterday. He met with Stacey Abrams when he was in Georgia.
Stacey Abrams does not represent Georgia. Get this straight. Stacey Abrams does not represent Georgia in any way, form, or fashion.
To let Don Everett stay together when they're not a biological parent.
Well, I think that there are steps that are taken to ensure, because there has been a history of child trafficking.
It's not what he asked.
And we want to prevent that from being a risk that is
Answer the question.
That is posed to children. I'm not aware of any consideration of changes. I'm happy to
My
check
God,
and see if
there's 30 seconds of our life we just wasted because she didn't answer the question.
In the scenario,
Next.
So we are mindful of that as well. Go ahead.
I have a question about the Iowa 2nd Congressional District race. 4 Republican senators in a letter to corporations are calling the battle for Democrats to take back the seat an unacceptable attempt to undermine a legitimate democratic process. Does the president agree with their assessment?
I believe that the process that is outlined by the House of Representatives is what's being followed here to ensure every vote is counted. So no, he wouldn't agree with that.
And then just one more question. Will the White House comply with the White House Democrats' request for documents from the last 6 weeks of the Trump administration as part of their investigation into what happened on January 6th?
Anything to make Trump look bad, they will.
A lot of those documents would be in the National Archives.
Thank you, Jen. Has the president been briefed or seen the images of migrants that have passed away at the border in the past couple of days, including a 9-year-old girl? And does he have any response to that?
Well, I would say this is, he is regularly briefed by his immigration team and kept abreast of all developments at the border.
God, this woman is
I
so
would say
full
that
of
those images
crap.
are a reminder of how dangerous this journey is and why this is not the time to come.
Did she ask
and
that?
It's just is a reminder of how important it is that we work together. This is not a
Focus,
partisan
Jen.
issue. This is an issue where we're talking about people's
She
lives,
didn't ask that.
children's lives.
She did not.
and
Do
we're
I have to
focused
do this
on,
every question
working
she's
with anyone
asked?
who wants to be
She
part
does
of a
not
solution
answer. She
to
goes off on a
address the
tangent
challenges
that
we
is
face.
away from the direction
You and the
of the
president
question.
yesterday talked about negotiating with Mexico. What is Mexico asking for to take the migrants back?
I don't think we're going to get into its private negotiations. I will just say that it's not a question of if, but when we work through with the Mexican government, being able to have the capacity to take some of these
Pressure
families
point.
back. Part of the discussion, of course, when Ambassador Jacobson and others were in the region was on exactly these issues, but it was just the first trip. As we announced just a couple of days ago, the Vice President will be playing an important role.
She didn't ask
here.
anything about that.
There, we have just
She
announced
did
an
not
envoy.
ask
These
anything about
discussions
Campbell
will be
Toe Harris.
ongoing. We would
Nothing.
expect
So
this
why are you
first
bringing
trip
that
to be
up?
inclusive.
And as you make it
Red
now
herring,
that
shiny
this
ball,
is the
squirrel.
package, your next priority, where does immigration reform fall on the list of priorities for this White House?
Any White House, including ours, has to walk and chew gum at the same time, move forward on a range of priorities, a range of
Answer the
crises
question,
facing
Jen.
the
Every
country.
single time
So
she does this.
we will continue to work with members of Congress, work with outside
Did
groups.
she ask that?
Continue to advocate for moving
Did she ask
long
that?
overdue immigration
Did she
reform
ask
forward.
that, Jen? No.
Go ahead.
Don't answer the question. We don't care.
mentioned inviting an alliance of democracies before too long.
Yeah.
Can you define when before too long might be, and
No.
whether it would be to the White House?
Go on a diatribe and don't answer the question, Jen.
Whether
I
it
can
comes to
answer
the
that
White
question
House,
for you, dude.
How many countries?
Well,
does he
the
envision?
president, as you know,
That's a great question. There's not. He's something he talked about broadly
As
on
you
the campaign
know,
trail. I don't have any
the
additional
president has
details
lost
at
his
this
mind.
point in time. I expect we'll have
He
some
is
more on our
senile,
climate summit soon, which
so
will
he
be
can't
the
plan
next
anything.
Summit
Sorry.
type of international engagement, but I don't have anything to preview.
Why don't
for
you just
on
answer?
that
Why don't you just say that I don't have anything for you?
event.
Next.
Prime Minister Suga's visit to Washington was announced like 2 weeks ago by the Japanese government, and I wondered why is there a holdup in announcing the date?
Oh, it's not. We're working out the final date and logistics. We're looking forward to welcoming the Prime Minister here, but I wouldn't read anything into it beyond that. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jen.
Happy Friday.
Guys, it is painfully obvious. Painfully obvious. I'm going to pull my Joe Biden. It is. Anyway, whatever. I don't know what I was saying. It is painfully obvious that this woman is the mouthpiece for a dictator. And the sad thing is he's like most dictators in their later years, is he's not doing anything. It's the people around him that are causing this, and he's just the mouthpiece. I mean, do you think that he really wants to sign all these executive orders? Do you think this man is sitting behind the Resolute desk saying, oh, we got to do something about blah, blah. Bring me something. I'm going to sign something. We're going to do something about that. Oh, bring me another paper. I got to sign. He is not. He is not there, guys. He doesn't know what day it is. I guarantee you he doesn't know what day it is. That's how far gone he is. And this woman is lying. Her press briefings, every time she has them, has turned into just a litany of lies. And when they don't give her softball questions, she will not answer. And we don't have time for this like she does. We got to move on. Today's press briefing was the shortest one they've done yet. And for some reason, she had to push Peter Doocy aside because they were in such a worry, because they had, man, we got to stop this. We have got to stop the lies. We've got to stop the cover-up. We've got to stop the non-transparency when they say they ran on a transparency platform. We got to stop their lies. It's going to collapse. Our country's going to collapse because of this administration, because of what they're doing and how they don't think they can do anything wrong. Anyway, She just confirmed this administration is a dictatorship. She 100% confirmed it. Joe Biden is a dictator. He's not a Democratic, Republican elected. Y'all, I don't know what to say. This is awful. This is awful. There's no accountability up there. And when accountability comes, it's not going to be pretty. I'm telling you now, it's not going to be pretty. You will be held accountable eventually, because the American people will not put up with you running this country into the ground to the point where China's going to be able to take over. Y'all watch Drew Hernandez. Support Drew Hernandez. Go right now. I'm finished. Type in Drew Hernandez and go watch his latest video. Man's awesome.